All right, good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock, and welcome to the telePD Friday. My name is MSgt Marszalek. I am the DGS2 Talent Management Advisor at Beale Air Force Base. I'm from the Beale Top 3 Professional Development Committee. So we do these sessions every Friday. So today I'm going to do a session on motivation. So I think motivating others is a skill that maybe some would argue is just impossible. You just can't make somebody else want to do something. I say that we have to approach it just like we would approach anything, and that is to study it. For some airmen, maybe you think they're unreachable. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's the case, but I would say, there are a lot of different approaches, and maybe it's finding that one approach. So today I'm going to talk to you about classical work motivation theory proposed by Douglas McGregor in 1960, called Theory X and Theory Y. And I'm going to talk about how it's still relevant today and how executive coaches are using it to advise CEOs and successful people how to motivate their employees. And it's just one approach. There's many approaches. One resonates. So first, message. Okay. Can everyone hear me? If you're having issues hearing, can you just say it in the chat? Okay, I'm going to press on. Okay, so first, I want you to tell me about your airmen. What do you say about your airmen to your peers? How do you talk about them? What adjectives would you use to describe them? And maybe we can get a couple people that want to speak, or you could just put it in the chat too.
Hey, Mars, one word I would say is different.
Okay. Different as in?
Different, it's something that's always said, right? I guess whatever, a couple generations ago, I'm sure when we were all airmen, they're probably saying certain things that some may chime in and say, lazy, freaking, a lot of negative words or whatever the case. For me, I think I just view them as different. It's a different time. Technology, obviously we didn't have Snapchat and Instagram 10 years ago or whatever the case. So social media definitely makes it different. Our phones make it a lot different. And some will say, oh, it's so bad, it's negative, and that's all they do is look at their phones. It's perspective. It's, someone could say it's a negative thing, but then others can say, actually, all the information that we had, used to have to either experience or go research and look in freaking, back in the day, right? Britannica, encyclopedia or whatever. Now jokers can just bring up their phone and then just research it and learn it right away if they're actually interested. So it's different, and learning how to motivate our airmen now is you just have to find different ways to motivate them and see how you can tap into them. So yeah, I'd say different.
Sure. Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points about how we might look at our airmen, compared to ourselves, just thinking back of when I was an airman. Yeah, it's just different, good or bad, pretty neutral. Does anybody else want to share? What do you think about your airmen? What do you say about them to their peers? And you can write it in the chat if you want to. Okay, well, I'm trying to make this as interactive as possible. So maybe you guys will be more active after a minute. So, okay. So I would never say anything negative, somebody says. Okay. That's good. That's good. I was wondering if people just want to say what they say about their airmen, because you know, there's a lot of people in this session and maybe they don't want it to get back to them. So, okay. So maybe you are the supervisor saying things like this, or are you saying things like this? I know in my experience, I hear a lot of supervisors talking about their airmen like this person on the left, right? It's like they've kind of given up on them. They're just, this airman's lazy. My airman's lazy. They're not doing anything. You know, and that's how they look at them. All right, so let's bring in Douglas McGregor's competing theories of theory X and theory Y. Right, so he believes there's two types of managers that believe they have two separate sets of beliefs, right? There's theory X managers and theory Y managers, right? And they have opposing beliefs. So I'm going to go click through both of the theories. It's going to give a pair of statements, and I just want you to type in the chat which of the statements you find yourself being more, agreeing more with. And so just type in an X or a Y. And try to be honest. Both. Okay. A lot of X's, a lot of both. Okay, interesting. Ones that say both. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Okay, really interesting. It looks like everyone's responded to all of them. Got a really good mix of both X and Y managers in here. This is definitely, obviously, not a black and white sort of theory, right? It's probably more of a continuum, right? Or which of the statements more of the statements do you agree with? So thinking about theory X and theory Y managers, what do you think each of those managers looks like to their subordinates?
I would say that the Y manager looks like they trust their airmen to be able to accomplish the mission, and the X manager feels like they need more hands-on leadership with their airmen. Like X kind of seems micromanaging a little bit, or Y looks more empowerment.
Okay. Anybody else? Let's see an Ashley Adams in the chat.
Hello, ma'am. How are you today? So what were you asking, how X and Y managers would be perceived from their airmen?
Mm-hmm.
If I were an airman and I had an X supervisor, I might feel unmotivated because they don't have any like trust in me that I can do anything. Might not be as committed to the goal or have any buy-in towards the mission.
Yeah. I mean, the Theory X manager probably doesn't think that you have any buy-in. So I think these theories are really interesting. Did anybody, before I move on, does anybody else want to share? And if you can if you want to put it in the chat, that's okay too.
Dr. Mars, hello. I will absolutely share.
Okay.
I was one of the people who like chronically said both. I think that's
okay.
partially because I was identifying that there could be big differences in personality types, or that they could be progressive, right? So like, I think X in this scenario says to me like, maybe that these airmen don't have confidence yet in performing particular tasks. Maybe they're still lower in their Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're kind of in this survival mode. So it's not saying that like, you know, that they won't cultivate those kinds of things that would make them successful under a Y-type leader, but maybe that they aren't there yet. And then the Y types, I think that's wonderful for people who come in who feel comfortable in the structure of the military and who are already sort of bought into the system. And I think that really helps to like give them autonomy and allow them to feel empowered to just run with it, and you can really be their like rah advocate at that point. But if you have somebody who's very needy, you may end up falling into that left category a little bit more chronically, because you might also need to lean a little bit harder on the people around you as a first-line supervisor, because it takes a lot to hold somebody's hand. It takes a lot of time and a lot of other resources to really have two jobs on your plate simultaneously at that point.
Sure. Definitely. So I think that probably a lot of supervisors, a lot of NCOs, maybe for some of their airmen, they're subscribing to X, and some of them are subscribing to Y, based on things that she said. They aren't there. They aren't there yet, right? But so I think it's interesting if we applied theory X, theory Y to all of our airmen, to everyone, right? Because there's that assumption. So, and maybe it is like, there is like less buy-in, but if we continue to look at somebody with theory X, what is that going to do to their growth or to their productivity, right? So, now I want to talk to you about, like the X and Y theory is really talking about how the managers look at their airmen. Supervisors might look at their airmen. So now let's look at Liz Wiseman's multipliers and how those airmen may look at those specific managers. I think she does a good job at describing it. So this is Liz Wiseman. She was VP at Oracle. She's a best-selling author and executive coach. So her approach to leadership is multipliers and diminishers. And I think it really parallels with McGregor's theory. And it gives us a good picture of what those leaders look like. But I think she gives a really good tools by giving clear description and measurable behaviors of those beliefs for each manager, the X and Y managers. Okay. So here's how she makes somebody who subscribes to theory Y as a multiplier. Oh, I mixed these up. Sorry, these are mixed up. So she might describe a multiplier as a leader who uses their smarts to amplify the smarts and capabilities of others. And she would describe a diminisher as a leader who drains intelligence and energy from those around them. So sorry. Okay. moving on, want to take a minute to watch this video and just please let me know if you guys have any sound issues, okay?
How would you manage if you even held a subtle
All right, can you guys hear that? Okay.
assumption that people on your team and in your company aren't going to? Would you truly delegate? Would you give accountability? Would you give ownership? Here's what we found they did. In terms of how they manage talent, they tend to be empire builders. They love to hire A players. They love to hire smart people. And then they just take them and they put them in a background, sort of behind glass on display. Smarts in the company, but not well utilized. The environment they create is one of tyrants. It's full of anxiety, and we know what happens to our brains under conditions of anxiety. For the cognitive psychologists out here, people who study psychology, what happens? What part of our brain takes over when we feel anxiety? Well, the neocortex shuts down, and the amygdala takes over. They call it the amygdala hijack. And when the amygdala takes over, you go into that basic survival mode of how do I just get out of this meeting? And what's interesting is all the parts of your brain that does analytics, logic, reasoning, thoughtful thinking, it shuts down. And what's fascinating about this is it takes 20 minutes, once you're no longer in that stressful situation, for your brain to start working again. That's why when you leave a meeting and you go back to your desk and you fire up your email and then you suddenly go, I totally knew the answer to that. Why didn't I say that? It's because your brain shuts down. So we get kind of stupid when we're in these environments. How do they set direction? They tend to be know-it-alls. They set direction based on what they see, what they know, their expertise, maybe the functional expertise they came from. How do they set direction for the and make decisions inside the organization? They tend to be the decision maker. They make those decisions solo or in inner circles, maybe really small councils. But here's the problem. The problem is that every important decision inside your organization, every important decision gets debated. I guarantee you. But when does the debate take place? Takes place after the decision, in the hallway, over chat, hopefully not out on Twitter. It takes place out in the organization where people are trying to figure out what's going on. And sometimes it's, hey, what was she thinking? But sometimes it's just, I don't understand. I don't really know what I need to know. They can't execute. And they tend to be micromanagers. They tend to hover over every detail because people won't figure it out without them. And we've already gone through, they get less than half of the capability of the people around them. Multipliers see the world very differently. They look out on people and they see a lot of intelligence. They see lots of ways that people are intelligent, and they have a very simple conclusion. And it's like a little ticker tape that goes around in the head, and it says, people are smart and we'll figure it out. What would you do if you really came to work every day and said, I work around brilliant people and they're going to figure it out? What would you do? Shout it out. You would relax. I love that one. What else? What would you do? You would empower them. What would you do? Give me specifics. You would be a cheerleader. What else would you do? If your people are smart and they're going to figure this out, challenge them more. So yes, you can relax for a moment, but then you're going to say, you know what? I can push harder. So the harder I push, the smarter they're going to get. What else would you do? You would coach, because your people are going to figure it out. It's the dominant mindset of these multipliers. Here's what they do. Each one of these comes with a little bit of a deal. The first is that they're talent magnets. They attract talent. They find people's genius, and then they utilize it to its fullest. And here's the little deal that goes with each one of them. And it's kind of this little arrogant deal, but they have a sense of, if I can figure out your genius, I can put you to work. And with that deal, everyone in the organization works for them. When you're a multiplier, you don't care who's on the org chart. You don't care who reports to you. you're going to put everyone to work. You put your boss to work. This is why I always like this so much. They tend to be liberators. They create an environment where people can do their best thinking. But again, it's a deal. I'm going to give you space, a lot of space to do your best thinking, but in exchange for that, you give me your very best work. They're unrelenting about demanding that people in exchange give them their very, very best work. They tend to be challengers. They create stretch that causes people to feel a little bit uncomfortable. The liberator in some ways makes people feel very comfortable, safe to do your best thinking. The challenger makes people feel uncomfortable. Now, I need someone here from, oh, I don't know, table 16 maybe. Is there someone here? David, thank you. Come on up. Okay, I brought my rubber band. David's going to come up here, and you're going to just kind of play the challenger with me. Let's see if we have enough space on the stage. Don't fall backward. Now, I'm just going to have David pull, you know, give that a really good stretch. Okay, yeah, that's okay. I'm uncomfortable. How are you guys feeling right now? 10? Okay, I'm not feeling so great. Go ahead, you can probably go a little further. Okay, how are you guys feeling now? More tense. Okay, this is about ready to snap. Now, this is what the challenger does. They stretch people to a point where it feels very, very uncomfortable. Now, what has to happen in this scenario? How long can we stay like this? Not very long. What has to happen? Either I'm going to let go, that wouldn't be very nice, or I'm going to move toward him to reduce that tension. And what can he, oh, you are so ahead of me. So he pulls it again. Okay, you can pull a little tighter. Okay, he doesn't want to fall off the table. Now I'm making him uncomfortable. And again, I feel that tension, and I can feel it in my stomach. It makes me nervous because the snap thing is not good, and I move toward him. So David, you've been a good challenger. Thank you. This is what they do. They stretch people so tight like this that they make them uncomfortable. And people go, you know, I can't stay in this state of tension. I've got to move toward the goal. They create stretch. They set goals that are so big and so challenging that people either let go of them or they move forward. But they create the belief that allows people to move forward. They're debate makers. When it comes to the important decisions, they know their most important role is to create rigorous debate. They create that debate up front so the decisions can happen later. And how they drive for results, they're investors. And they don't think of this just as they invest in people's careers. They give ownership. They say, you are in charge. They're like John Chambers when he hired Doug Allred, the very first vice president, into Cisco, back when Cisco was a small company. And he said, Doug, you're going to be vice president responsible for customer support. And when it comes time for this part of the business, you own 51% of the vote. He said, you own it. If your boss gave you 51% of the vote, how would you manage? Would you go to him for every decision? You've already been told you're winning every decision. But would you go wild? Would you run rogue? Probably not. They give other people ownership, but what do they ask for in exchange? Results and accountability. I'm going to give you the ownership. This is yours, but I'm going to hold you accountable.
All right. Liz Wiseman talking about multipliers and diminishers. That's how she is describing the Theory X and Theory Y managers and what they look like. Right? Does anybody want to share their initial thoughts on the video? Love that. Okay. Cool, me too. Okay, so nobody else wanted to share anything. So let's talk about each of those traits, right? She mentioned several traits of diminishers and several traits of multipliers. Let's go through each of them and talk about how those types of leaders are motivating their airmen. Okay, so right, the diminishers believe, their airmen aren't going to figure it out without them. They need their help, and multipliers are seeing their airmen as super smart, and they're going to figure this out by themselves. So the first traits are empire builders or talent, right? So she talks about the empire builder are leaders who love owning the talent. They love having like the most motivated, hard-charging, strong airmen on their teams. Like they want all of those people on their teams. And they're only gonna, but they're very territorial. They only use people on their teams, right? They're like strictly adhering to the organizational chart. But they have to be the most talented person in the room. They focus heavily on their own talents and really don't like to be challenged or overshadowed, right, by the troops. They only value one type of skill set, like only one sort of talent, and they praise that person or that type of skill set, and they only use them in one way. The talent magnet, on the other hand, they don't see the org chart. They're just putting everybody to work when they see talented people and they see like ways to use them. They admire all of the different types of talents, like and skill sets people are bringing to the table. They're really good at spotting what is somebody just naturally good at, and then they shine a spotlight on it, on what that talent is, like tell everyone, hey, look at Sergeant Jones, look at you, and then they should present to do it best. And they're really good at connecting the right people to the right opportunities, and they're also not afraid of letting go of superstars. So when they have an incredible person on their team who's like grown and accomplished so much already, and like a new assignment, a cool new assignment comes up, a deployment comes up, they're not afraid of losing that airman. And they acknowledge like, okay, this person has other areas to grow that maybe I cannot grow them on the team. And they're not worried because they know like other people are right behind them to take their place that are capable of so much. So how do you think an empire builder and the talent magnet are motivating?
I think that the talent magnet probably has a lot more productivity underneath them because their people are autonomous and working on their own. And that, I don't know, to me as a senior NCO, I feel like that's the best way to do business because it allows me to worry about the things that my people need instead of being me being a power builder or information. Take care of everything myself. I know that my people are going to take care of the mission, so it lets me make sure that they have the tools that they need to create innovative solutions and take care of everything.
Okay.
I think what I see for the diminishers portion, a lot of times what that looks like to me when I see it is like a lot of competition, especially inner organization competition. And so they use that to motivate, which can sometimes be good for one or two tasks, but then they lean too heavily on it. And so it creates sort of a hostile environment.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, with empire builders, right, they have a like very linear viewpoint on talent. It's like you're good or you're not good at this one thing. Like this is what we're here, and tries to measure it in like a very linear way. So yeah, and it's not like with a talent magnet. It's just like we all have different talents and we're all strong at different things. And how can those like natural talents like best be used?
Hi, ma'am. Airman Haswell from the 9th MXS. I like the multiply, and I agree with Master Sergeant Hawkins in utilizing the talent of all your airmen. Because I believe if you empower them to be their best version of themselves, you're going to bring your organization up a level at a time. If you just empower the airmen that already have the skills and you really just hone in on them, then you're only making a section of your squadron or your group wing better. So.
Yeah, exactly. You're like really limiting like your team's ability to be productive and to accomplish things.
And then I think that becomes learned behavior too for the next generation of leaders, because that's how they learned how to be a supervisor at the next level. So then that's what they're supposed to be doing because they were taught. You know, it's really toxic trait as a leader, I think.
Yeah.
The slippery slope fallacy.
I agree with as well. This is Senior Airman Street. I feel like the type of team that an empire builder would build is more likely to collapse much quicker than the one from a multiplier, because basically once the main function of that team is over or the leader moves on, that team really has no purpose, and they probably were in competition with each other and all that kind of stuff, so probably didn't build the best work environment in the first place. And so it's most likely to collapse and not continue on. Well, I feel like the multiplier, like they're already pretty much self-reliant, but they just have they have a general purpose of what they're supposed to do, so they're able to continue on and continue the skills on through multiple generations of people.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that because that's what Liz Wiseman says too. I don't have it in the presentation, but she talks about how multipliers multiply leaders, and who create leaders who create leaders who create leaders. So.
And ma'am, going off of go ahead.
I feel like the empire builder likely has a more authoritative leadership style, which just creates a really toxic environment, and there's going to be no cohesion for that group. So they're just going to initially maybe start off with some motivation, but as they go on through their tasks, they're just going to lose all that motivation.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to the next trait and talk about how diminishers motivate by being a tyrant and multipliers motivate by being a liberator. So they say that tyrants create a lot of stress and anxiety. In their airmen, in doing so, they force people to retreat and not speak up. The tyrant does most of the thinking and all of the talking, really completely dominating the space. They insist on their own ideas and show kind of a passive indifference to the input of others. They're really harsh critics of other people's mistakes. And they find really good excuses for any mistakes that they've made. And they're really judgmental, right? So the liberator, they create a really high pressure atmosphere that makes people rise to the challenge. They give people space to express their ideas and like the time to actually fully develop them. But they also demand their airmen's best work. They are okay with mistakes, but they think that it should be a rapid learning cycle. So when you make mistakes, you quickly learn from them, and you redirect course yourself. In meetings, right, they're not dominating the space. They're actually silent most of the time, listening effectively, and they always give their inputs last. And they think that genius is going to come from all different ranks, all different levels of experience, even if you're super new to the organization. you know, you also have creative, new, innovative ideas to contribute. So let's talk about how a tyrant would motivate and how a liberator is going to motivate their airmen.
Ma'am, I think with the tyrant approach, they're projecting their values and beliefs onto their airmen and they're putting them in this box. And they can only stay within those values that they think they have to adhere to until they break out of this box or break down or lose interest. And I like the liberator kind of being there, you know, giving their opinion last and being open and giving them all the tools they need to succeed with telling them which tools to use. This really creates a longer work ethic for those airmen.
Okay. What else?
I think the tyrant style of leadership only works for a very specific task with very limited parameters, and it really can't think outside of those parameters. But liberators are best for basically anything that is outside of limited parameters, and you can do more creative things with it. But I can see a reason for the tyrant to exist, but only for very limited experiences, I guess, or limited situations.
I think that's a really good point. So from a aircraft maintenance perspective, like I'm a core tyrant guy. So tyrant situation, like we have weapons troops that load missiles and bombs onto the jets, right? They have a checklist that they have to follow step by step. There is no thinking. They are not allowed to go outside of the box at all. Then you have guys like your guys or your E&E guys that are doing more troubleshooting and have to like read system theory and stuff and like be innovative thinkers and create new solutions to problems. Versus like a task that if this is not followed step by step by step, someone could die or something could blow up. You know? So to that point, I think there are situations too that require to be that tyrant role where I'm giving you the hands, and then times when you need to be free to figure out your own solutions.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. I would say, you know, you were saying that in some, at some times, like that's the time to be creative and to like think of innovative solutions. Like you'll have like time to have a meeting and to discuss. So I would say, is everybody invited to those meetings? Is there, yeah, Sergeant Hawkins, is everybody invited to those meetings?
Yeah, I mean, well, not really meetings because we're like, I'm thinking more from a flight line maintainer perspective. So we're like out on the jet and like reading through books together and talking as a team to like figure out solutions when it comes to like finding out why power won't turn on or something like that. That's a different kind of thinking space than load missile to station 1. Up, down, like in that situation, there's no meeting. There is a meeting about it prior to because they have like a safety briefing or whatever, but not about like, hey, is there a different way we can do this task? No, there isn't. Follow the steps.
Okay, I think the point is that when those conversations are had, you know, that everyone is invited, and so that there's buy-in from all of the levels and. Right. Okay. Did anybody else have a comment on tyrants or liberators, or do you want to move to the next one?
I was just gonna say one more thing, Mars. You mentioned about like in meetings and all that good stuff, and just listening to your folks, and I think everybody kind of, you know, had some input with it. I think Simon Sinek said that like Mandela's dad was a chief or something like that, and when he would go into a meeting with his, you know, tribal members, he would listen first, you know, and hear what they had to say. before he even began speaking. Because yeah, someone mentioned that too, where once you put your little take on something, they're already thinking a certain way, and they're like, you know, okay, cool, that's what the boss wants, that's what we're gonna do. Whether you're in a meeting or whether you're just talking amongst your peers or subordinates, listen first, see what they have to say, take it all in. And he said it's really challenging to not even nod your head or shake your head or, you know, in agreement, just to not even give them any verbal signs, just so you can really take it all in and see where they're coming from. And then once you soaked all that information in, boom, then you kind of give your input and then base it off of that. So yeah, listening is so vital if you want to be that liberator.
Yeah, I think what you said, that's so important on a lot of different levels, because you got to think when the leader comes into the room, you know, you want to gauge where your team's at. You want to be able to gauge what your team's thinking already. And if you say your opinions, your ideas first, and you are that more authoritarian, take up that more authoritarian role, the team's going to shut down. If they have opposing views, they're not going to share them, right? So, and then you'll have no idea like where your team is even at. The ideas and inputs that they give at that point I think will be like really watered down. You know, they're going to be influenced. So, some good points.
Yeah.
Okay. The next set of traits: the know-it-all and the challenger. So the know-it-all, they assume that their job is to be the smartest one in the room. You know, you got promoted, you were promoted, right, to staff sergeant, to tech sergeant, so you are the smartest person in the room. You have to be. So they see themselves as thought leaders, and they're readily sharing their insights, but it's in a way to sort of showcase what they know, right? And it doesn't invite contribution when they're sharing. So the know-it-all, they bark orders, they tell people how to do their job, and I think that we would separate that different from training. You know, this is like, you know, after OJT, this is how to do your job. They don't want their intelligence or experience questioned, and they put a lot of artificial limits on what the team can do, right? So the challenger, right, they're extending challenges to their team. So they plant seeds by demonstrating the need, right? Is you have to make people feel the need. They provoke thinking, independent thinking, begin a process of discovery. They challenge those artificial limits. They challenge assumptions, and they create a belief that more is possible. They point people to a vision and then lay down a challenge, right? Without explaining how something needs to get done. Just pointing people to a vision. They're good at stretching people, right? Extend stretch challenges, extending airmen and teams just right outside of their comfort zone, right? Just right outside of what they think is even possible, not too far. So they ask a lot of tough questions and allow their airmen to answer, knowing that maybe their troops have the best solutions, are going to come up with the best solution, right? They encourage their troops to be smarter than they are. They know that it's entirely possible, likely even, and they encourage it. And something else they do is they kind of like orchestrate small wins to like build confidence and trust in the process. So a know-it-all and a challenger have to motivate their airmen. And if you can give an example of when somebody else has done it, Is the audio cutting out? I don't know. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, but just you're cutting out at just some points during a sentence, and then we missed maybe 3 or 4 seconds.
Oh, okay. So I was just putting the know-it-all and the challenger in more detail. And then I was asking, how do you guys think? I did a little. How do you guys see both of those motivating the airmen, and how? And maybe if you had an example from your shops that you wanted to share. That too.
I think a challenger kind of gives airmen the opportunity to work outside of their comfort zone, which they may not like initially, but it does kind of open that gateway to success and allow them to learn through trial and error. And I think it's important for continuous process improvement as well.
Okay.
I believe these can both be beneficial and utilized correctly just by knowing your airmen, their learning styles. Or do they just need that direction? Is the job need to get done? Is the aircraft side or whatever the job is? Or do you have time to challenge them? Do you have time to train them? Do you have time to let them figure it out on their own so that they can feel like they're contributing and they're learning and they're growing?
There's a lot of brand new staff sergeants in this meeting right now, right? So I would say this, as the senior NCO chief of the section, you guys are first line supervisors, and you have an A1C that's came to work late 2 times, and I noticed that the airman's been late to work 2 times. You're the first line supervisor, and I come to you and I tell you you need to write my LOC. Right? I'm telling you that that's what you need to do, and how you need to do the progressive discipline and enact that now is a whole completely different teaching moment than if I talk to you and I'm like, hey, I noticed your airman was late. What's going on? And you're like, oh, I didn't notice. Or I've talked to him. Actually, I wanted to talk to you, Sergeant Hawkins, and kind of pick your brain about what I should do next because I really don't know. Something like that. Versus me telling you, oh, he's been late twice, write him an LOC. I'm not empowering you to be the most effective supervisor for that airman, creative solutions to correct your behavior. I'm robbing you of that whole experience of growing up and taking it all on myself because I know exactly what's supposed to happen, what I think should happen to this person, instead of helping you on your journey to figure it out.
Yeah, so that's like Hawk is saying, are you just a know-it-all? I know what you need to do in this situation. Instead of challenging that person to, can you handle this situation? You guys all made some really good points. Does anybody else want to comment on? Okay.
Sure.
So next, decision maker or debate maker. Right. So on the video, you've heard her talking about this. The decision maker quickly makes a decision, and believe there's only a few people worth listening to their inputs before making that decision. They might have a small inner circle that they consult, or they just are going to make a decision on their own. They're not using any sort of methodological approach, right? And then they force that decision on their team. The debate maker, right? They frame an issue and they spark debate, right? And they want everyone to participate in these debates. They demand rigor, right? So they demand that when you are pushing an idea, that you bring evidence, that you have evidence, that you have data that demonstrating why your idea is the best idea and why should we consider this in the debate, right? They want to pursue all of the angles. They challenge underlying assumptions, continuously asking why, to get to the root cause. Maybe you guys are doing that, the root cause in ALS. So they allow hidden issues to come to the surface. Maybe you guys have been in a situation where, it's like we got this problem, but the underlying like issues, like nobody's talking about them, and they're kind of like blaming it on this like surface level symptoms, right? So the debate maker, they attack issues and not people. So they get really intense. They get really intense about attacking the issue, but not people. And then by the end of it, they make ensure that a strong decision is reached, right? So what do you guys think about the decision maker versus the debate maker and how they might motivate people?
The debate maker is, that's a good style because I feel that by consulting with other people, it needs to not only gives you a better vision of what should happen, but it also gives those other people a little bit of empowerment by making them a part of the process. And when you have that level of inclusion, you take a bit of ownership in the product that you're influencing.
Yeah, that's a huge benefit of doing the debates.
I liked Sergeant Indalacio. Sorry if I'm correcting that. I liked the analogy to the tribesman and chief listening to what his people have to say before putting any input into the debate maker, because it gives them an opportunity to get their point out without feeling influenced from the boss man's perspective.
Yeah, and if you remember, like the diminishers don't like to be challenged, right? So they're going to say their idea first, and they don't want to be challenged. So, and the debate maker is taking this opposite approach. Like, okay, like you're saying, like I'm going to speak last and hear everybody else's gauge where they're at first, and encourage that. Like encourage this sort of discourse on a topic, and with the underlying belief that together by like demanding this debate, this rigorous debate, right, where data and evidence is being discussed, like that a better solution is going to be made in the end, right? And not just you're not being a decision maker like right off the bat, like I made a decision because you're too afraid of being challenged. And I know some people think like you don't want to be indecisive, right? So it's easier to just make a decision really quickly, and then you're gonna firmly stick to it, even when these hidden issues are arising, like contradictory evidence is being presented, right? It's like you're so afraid of being indecisive. So I think that's what the multiplier is bringing with being a debate maker is, okay, we will methodically approach this, hash out all of the data, and then we'll make a strong decision to get, together that has considered all of the different inputs, approached all of these different angles, right? And then making a strong decision. So make a strong decision, but doing the process first. So, yeah, you may end up finding an even better solution when you become new ideas, opinions from the group before rapidly implementing. Yep. Good stuff, guys. Okay, we only have a few more minutes, so we can hurry up and get through the next one. Sorry. So the micromanager versus the investor, right? The micromanager, they maintain ownership of every program, every process. The airmen can't do this without me. They assign piecemeal tasks and then jump in, when there's a mistake, thinking my airmen, there's no way they can't do this right? Kind of helicopter control freak supervisors. And the investor, right, clearly defined and acknowledged, right? And they do provide support. So if, this is your lane of effort, you own it, this is your process, this is your program, I'm here if you need me. If you need training, if you need education, if you need something, I will ensure you have the resources. But this program is yours. They demand that accountability though. Like this program, this process is yours, but you need to accomplish. Like you need to achieve. Like this needs to get done, right? And back to being the liberator, right? It's just like maybe you'll have some bumps in the road, maybe you'll make mistakes, but you will like redirect course, right? And trusting that they can do that. So we don't have a ton of time. Maybe if like one person wants to chime in about micromanagers or investors.
Hate micromanagers.
Agreed. Sergeant Jarvis, agreed. Hate micromanagers. So for you young leaders out there about to be first line supervisors, one of the things that you guys need to be careful about when it comes to these two different styles, I would say, is that the one on the right, the Y style, where we're doing talent management and recruiting, you can fall into a trap where you become this laissez-faire leader by not being involved. Just sitting back and being like, oh, shit'll get done. They'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. That's not the appropriate style to take, or like the appropriate approach to this kind of style. It still takes you being active and involved in talking to your people, and not just like let them run. You still have to like circle back, have conversations, make sure that they're doing well, and
Hawk, are you there? You were talking, your mouth was moving, but none of the words were coming out.
Oh, the mic was on. You hear nothing about the laissez-faire stuff?
It's like the first half, yes. The second half, no.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just saying, like, make sure you stay involved in the processes and understand what it is that your people are doing. Not necessarily dictate, but you shouldn't be dictating what they're doing, but you should know how they're coming up with solutions and being involved in the conversations that get them there from a mentor supervisor standpoint versus well, I think that you should do it this way. I think that you should do it that way. So just sitting back and not taking any action or not having any involvement isn't getting after what this Y-type leader.
So it's definitely a balance, right? Because it's definitely a balance, but I would say with the multipliers, it's not being a multiplier how this leadership approach is described. It's not about being the nice supervisor. That's not what it's about. It's not about being the cool one. It's really about driving your people. It's about motivating them. Having high expectations, like demanding a lot from them and getting the best. So I would encourage you guys, okay, so that's, this last bit is just about diminishers are really like suppressing the abilities of their airmen, whereas multipliers are twice as much of the capability from them, right? So that's what being a multiplier is about, right? Is having the high expectations, like maintaining accountability and asking a lot, like driving them to accomplish more than they thought that they even believed was possible. So I think that I've worked for a couple amazing multiplier leaders, but I really haven't met many. I would not say that I'm fully a multiplier boss myself. Some of those traits relate that I know I embody more than others, right? So wrapping up, I just wanted to say you know, I hope that the multipliers diminisher approach is a helpful tool in examining how y'all are looking at your troops and how you're motivating them. Because I've seen it too many times where people are subscribing to Theory X, right? Coming off as a diminisher boss, and they're really doing the opposite. You know, getting the opposite results, and they're doing the opposite of what they should be doing to get the best out of the airmen. Because I think our airmen are capable of so much, and it's believing that, and maybe, you know, it's like adopting new methods and approaches to get there. So the book is called Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. Here's some recommended reading. Drive, Turn the Ship Around, all of those have similar concepts about creating leaders, leading leaders, and then The Human Side of Enterprise. That is the book by Douglas McGregor. And it's an older book, but it's good. And it's funny because I know Huck had kind of mentioned some of this is like antithetical to how we do things in the military. And in the book, he discusses how Theory X is very much a traditional military mindset. So it is changing, right, our Air Force and how we do things. So, all right, does anybody have any questions? Anything for me? Okay, the career advisor, Master Sergeant Hawkins, says he's got several copies of Turn the Ship Around at FTech. All right. Well, that's all I have for you guys, folks. Chief Faria put a YouTube video in the chat that's really good. So if you guys want to watch that, I'm about to watch it. All right, if there's nothing else for me, I'll see you guys next week on Friday. Our career advisor, Hawkins, is going to do the NCO retraining program.
And some airman retraining with
okay.
CAAs from around the Air Force. We'll all be on at 10 a.m. next Friday, so tune in or tell your airmen to tune in.